The emergency council session was called after what the aliens would forever remember as the Vorthan incident. The Vorthan Empire had ruled their part of the galaxy for 8,000 years. They were masters of fear and controlled dozens of star systems through superior technology and ruthless tactics. When they wanted something from other species, they simply took it. No one had ever said no to the Vorthan Empire. Captain Lim Song-woo was standing on the bridge of his colony ship when the Vorthan war fleet appeared above Tal Ceti. His human settlement was small, with only 5,000 people living on the planet below. The Vorthan fleet had 50 massive warships, each one bigger than anything humans had ever built. The Vorthan commander sent a message that was broadcast across the entire system. His voice was cold and filled with the arrogance of 8 millennia of unopposed conquest. He demanded that the human colony pay tribute of half their food, half their technology, and half their people to serve as slaves. The message ended with a simple threat: submit or be destroyed. Captain Lim Song-woo listened to the entire message without showing any emotion on his face. His crew waited to hear what he would say. The Vorthan had weapons that could crack planets in half. They had shields that had never been penetrated. They had armies that had conquered civilizations older than human history. Lim Song-woo activated his communication system and sent his reply back to the Vorthan fleet. His message was even simpler than theirs had been, just one word: no. The Vorthan commander could not believe what he had heard. In 8,000 years, no species had ever refused their demands. He sent the message again, thinking that humans had not understood. He explained that the Vorthan Empire had never been defeated. He described the terrible weapons that would turn their planet into glass. He promised that resistance would only make their suffering worse. Captain Lim Song-woo sent the same reply. The war that followed lasted exactly 18 days. It became known across the galaxy as the war that changed everything. The Vorthan had better ships and stronger weapons and more experience, but they had never fought an enemy like humanity. They had never faced warriors who treated impossible odds as just another problem to solve. Commander Oh Jin-ae was in charge of the human defense fleet. Her ships were smaller and weaker than the Vorthan warships, but she had something the aliens did not understand. She had studied every battle the Vorthan had ever fought. She knew their tactics and their weaknesses and their pattern. The first day of the war, Oh Jin-ae did something that no military academy in the galaxy taught. She turned the Vorthan orbital defense platforms against their own fleet. Using basic engineering knowledge and incredibly dangerous flying, her pilots hacked into the alien weapon systems. The platforms that were supposed to protect Vorthan space started shooting at Vorthan ships. Their Vorthan could not understand what was happening. Their own defenses were attacking them. Their perfect formations were being destroyed by weapons they had built themselves. Commander Oh Jin-ae had turned their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. Pilot Song Min-ho led the fighter squadron that broke the Vorthan battle line. His small ships were supposed to be no match for the giant alien cruisers, but Song Min-ho and his pilots did not fight the way any military manual said they should. They used tactics that broke every rule of proper space combat. Instead of flying in formation, they scattered like leaves in the wind. Instead of attacking from a distance, they flew so close to enemy ships that the Vorthan could not use their big guns. Instead of following battle plans, they made up new strategies every few minutes. The Vorthan commanders had prepared for war, but not for chaos. By the end of the first week, the mighty Vorthan fleet was in full retreat. Their ships limped away from human space with damage that would take months to repair. Their pride was broken and their reputation was destroyed. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light. Humanity had done the impossible. They had defeated the undefeatable. But what happened next scared the Galactic Council more than the military victory itself. Instead of conquering Vorthan space or demanding tribute, Captain Lim Song-woo did something no species had ever done before. He offered the Vorthan partnership. The human message to the defeated empire was simple. Humans did not want to rule anyone. They wanted to work together. They offered to share their technology and help rebuild the damaged worlds. They promised to treat former enemies as future friends. The Vorthan could not understand this concept. Victory was supposed to mean conquest. Defeat was supposed to mean slavery or death. But the humans offered something that had never existed before in galactic history. They offered redemption within months. Vorthan engineers were working alongside humans, learning new ways to build and create instead of just destroy. The alien warriors who had terrorized the galaxy for millennia were amazed by their new allies' ability to find solutions where others saw only problems. Da Cha-yoon Su made the discovery that sent shockwaves through every scientific institution in the galaxy. She was studying the quantum ruins on planet Zarian 7, ancient structures left behind by a civilization that had vanished millions of years ago. The ruins contained technology that even the oldest species could not understand for centuries. The greatest minds in the galaxy had studied these ruins, trying to unlock their secrets. The Zarian collective had spent 10,000 years analyzing just one small section. The crystal beings of Proxima had devoted their entire civilization to understanding the quantum patterns. Nothing had worked at Cha. Su approached the problem differently. Instead of trying to understand the alien technology, she tried to understand what the aliens were trying to accomplish. She spent months studying the ruins, not as mysterious artifacts but as tools built by people trying to solve problems. Her breakthrough came when she realized the ruins were not just technology, they were a communication system. The ancient civilization had built a network that could send messages faster than light across the entire galaxy. They had solved the problem of instant communication that had puzzled scientists for millions of years. When Dr. Cha Yun-Su activated the system for the first time in eons, the results were beyond anything anyone had imagined. Messages could now travel between stars instantly. Trade could be coordinated across vast distances. Families separated by light years could talk to each other as if they were in the same room. But instead of keeping this incredible discovery secret for human advantage, Dr. Cha Yun-Su did something that amazed every alien scientist in the galaxy. She immediately shared the technology with everyone. She published her research and gave away the construction plans. She even helped other species build their own communication networks. When asked why she was giving away such valuable knowledge, her answer was simple. Knowledge belongs to everyone, she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the universe. The idea that information should be shared freely was revolutionary. In a galaxy where species hoarded their discoveries like treasure, great convergence began 3 months later when 17 different star systems faced extinction from the gravitational pull of a rogue black hole. The massive object was tearing apart entire solar systems and pulling planets from their orbits. Billions of aliens faced certain death. The Galactic Council convened their greatest scientists and engineers to find a solution. The best minds from 47 species worked together for weeks, but their conclusion was hopeless. Saving the threatened systems would require technology that would not exist for another 1,000 years. The math was simple and brutal. Most of the 17 civilizations would die. Engineer No Tae-yang submitted his proposal on the last day before the council gave up hope. His plan was for a network of gravitational anchors that could stabilize the entire region. The anchors would use the black hole's own energy to create stable gravitational fields that would hold the star systems in place. The alien scientists read his proposal and shook their heads. It was impossible. They said the technology did not exist. The power requirements were beyond anything they could generate. The precision needed was greater than anything they could achieve. When they asked Engineer No Tae-yang how he knew his plan would work, he gave the answer that was becoming famous across the galaxy. Because it has to work, he said. 6 months later, 17 civilizations that should have been destroyed were safe and stable. The gravitational anchor network was working perfectly. The black hole that should have been a destroyer had become a source of unlimited energy. Billions of lives had been saved by human refusal to accept the impossible. The Galactic Council members sat in their great chamber and realized that everything had changed. The old order, where they controlled technology and information and power, was crumbling. The new order, where anything was possible if you refused to give up, was taking its place. And at the center of this transformation were the humans who had taught the galaxy the most dangerous idea of all, that there was no such thing as impossible, only problems that had not been solved yet. Dr. Kim Soo-jin floated inside her research station and smiled as she watched the neutron star spinning outside her window. The star was so dangerous that just looking at it should have killed her. The radiation coming from it was 1,000,000 times stronger than anything found on most planets. But Kim Soo-jin was not worried. She was excited. Her research station was orbiting the neutron star closer than any alien had ever dared to go. The station was protected by shields that humans had built, using ideas that other species said were impossible. The shields turned the deadly radiation into power that kept the station running. Kim Soo-jin and her team of 15 scientists were discovering secrets about the universe that ancient civilizations thought could never be learned. Day Kim Soo-jin sent reports back to Earth. The reports were full of discoveries that made alien scientists shake their heads in disbelief. She had found new ways to make energy that could power entire planets. She had learned how gravity worked in ways that could change space travel forever. She had even figured out how to predict when stars would explode. What made the aliens most afraid was not what Kim Soo-jin was discovering, it was how casual she was about working in a place that should have been impossible to survive. She drank her morning coffee while watching cosmic storms that could destroy solar systems. She took notes while radiation levels around her climbed higher than any alien measuring device could record. On the other side of the galaxy, Sergeant Choi Dong-ho was facing a different kind of impossible situation. His patrol of 12 humans had been walking across the desert planet Sigma Draconis when they saw dust clouds on the horizon. Choi Dong-ho used his binoculars and counted 36 Krillin warriors coming toward them. The Krillin were the most feared fighters in the galaxy. They were 3 meters tall with 4 arms and skin like armor. They had never lost a battle in over 100 years. When Krillin warriors wanted to take territory, they simply walked in and took it. No species had ever been able to stop them. Choi Dong-ho looked at his small team. The humans were tired from walking all day in the hot sun. Their weapons were basic military rifles that most aliens would laugh at. Their armor was simple metal plates that looked like toys compared to Krillin battlesuits, but none of the humans looked scared. The Krillin warriors spread out in perfect formation. As they approached, they moved like a machine that had been designed for killing. Their leader was the biggest Krillin that Choi Dong-ho had ever seen. His battle scars showed he had fought in dozens of wars. His 4 arms carried weapons that could cut through tank armor. When the Krillin leader was close enough to speak, He shouted a challenge in the ancient warrior language. It meant that the humans should surrender or die fighting. Choi Dong-ho shouted back in the same language. His answer was simple. He would not surrender, and his people would not run. The battle lasted 6 hours. The Krillin had better weapons and armor and more experience, but they had never fought humans before. They had never faced an enemy that got more determined as the fight got harder. When a human got wounded, he kept fighting. When a human ran out of bullets, he used his knife. When a human was knocked down, he got back up. Choi Dong-ho fought the Krillin leader while his team battled the other warriors. The alien was stronger and faster and had more arms, but Choi Dong-ho had something the Krillin did not understand. He was fighting not just to win, but to protect his friends. Every time the Krillin knocked him down, Choi Dong-ho thought about his team and got back up. When the sun started to set, only 8 humans were still standing, but 22 Krillin warriors were dead and the rest were running away. The surviving Krillin would tell stories about the Death World, fighters who could not be stopped. The humans had won not because they were better fighters, but because they refused to give up. Back on Earth, engineer Bae Yoon-ho was working in his laboratory on a project that was making the Galactic Council very nervous. He had taken apart a standard fusion Dr. engine and was rebuilding it using human engineering ideas. The aliens who made the original engine said it was perfect and could not be improved. Bae Yoon-ho did not believe anything was perfect. He had been working on the engine for 6 months. His workshop was full of broken parts and failed experiments, but every failure taught him something new. Every mistake showed him a better way to build things. When he finally finished his new fusion drive, it was twice as fast as the old one and used half as much fuel. The aliens who tested it could not believe the results. They had been using the same engine design for 300 years because their scientists said it could not be improved, but improvement was what humans did best. They looked at everything and asked how it could be better. They never accepted that something was good enough if it could be made greater. Bae Yoon-ho shared his fusion drive design with every species in the galaxy for free. He said, "Knowledge should belong to everyone." The new engines changed everything. Suddenly, ships that used to take months to travel between stars could make the same trip in weeks. Species that had never left their home system started exploring the galaxy. Old trade routes that had been used for centuries were replaced by faster, better paths. Admiral Jin Hae-won was commanding the human medical fleet when the emergency call came from Centauri Prime. The planet was dying from a plague that had already killed 90% of the population. The surviving aliens were weak and scared and waiting to die. The Galactic Council had sent their best doctors and scientists to help, but the plague was unlike anything they had ever seen. It killed so fast that victims died before treatments could work. It spread so quickly that entire cities were empty in days. The alien medical teams gave up and left the planet to die, but Admiral Jin Hae-won did not give up. She brought her medical ships to Centauri Prime and landed them right in the middle of the plague zone. Her crew of doctors and nurses started working immediately. They did not care that they might get sick. They did not worry that they might die. They only cared about saving lives. Dr. Yoon Sumi worked for 72 hours without sleeping. She studied the plague virus and tested hundreds of different treatments. Most of her experiments failed, but she kept trying. She believed that every problem had a solution if you were smart enough and determined enough to find it. On the 3rd day, Dr. Yoon Sumi found the answer. The plague virus had one weakness that could be attacked with the right medicine. She created a cure that not only saved the sick aliens but made them immune to similar diseases. The grateful Centauri people offered to give humanity their most advanced technology as payment, but the humans said no. They said saving lives was not something you did for payment. They said it was just the right thing to do. The Centauri could not understand this idea. Most species in the galaxy only helped others when they got something in return. By the end of the 2nd year, 31 different alien species had asked humanity for protection or partnership. Some wanted help building better colonies. Some wanted human doctors to cure their diseases. Some wanted human engineers to fix their old technology. The Galactic Council watched all of this happening and felt their power slipping away. For thousands of years they had controlled the galaxy by keeping species weak and separate. But humans were making everyone stronger and bringing them together. The old rules were breaking down. What scared the council most was that humanity was not conquering anyone. They were not taking territory by force. They were not demanding tribute or slaves. Instead, they were winning friends by being helpful and generous. They were gaining influence by solving problems and sharing knowledge. The ancient alien leaders met in secret sessions to discuss what they called a human problem. They had weapons that could destroy planets. They had armies that could conquer solar systems, but none of their traditional methods would work against an enemy that won battles by making friends. Intelligence reports showed that human colonies were not just surviving, they were thriving in places where other species would die. Human trade networks were making alien planets rich. Human technology was advancing faster than anything the galaxy had seen before. Director Cora Toon presented her latest findings to the emergency council session. The numbers were worse than anyone had feared. Human influence was spreading faster than a virus. Every species that worked with humans became stronger. Every planet that traded with humans became more prosperous. The council members looked at the data and realized They were facing something they had never encountered before, an enemy that conquered through kindness, a threat that grew stronger by making others strong, a force that could not be stopped because it refused to believe anything was impossible. The session ended. Ambassador Veltar spoke the words that everyone was thinking. The humans were not just changing the galaxy, they were replacing it with something new, something where the old rules no longer applied, something where anyone could achieve anything if they tried hard enough. The age of council control was ending. The age of human possibility was beginning, and no one knew how to stop it. The big meeting room was full of scared aliens. Ambassador Veltar from the Centauri Federation was walking back and forth. His blue skin was darker than usual, which meant he was very worried. The Galactic Council had been running things for 3,000 years. They kept peace between 47 star systems. But today, something new was happening. Something that made all the old powerful aliens shake with fear. On the giant screen floating in the middle of the room, numbers kept changing. Red numbers that showed how fast the humans were spreading across the galaxy. Every week there were more human ships. Every month there were new human colonies. The aliens had never seen anything like this before. Ambassador Veltar stopped walking and looked at the other council members. There were tall gray Xerians who could bend time. There were the crystal beings from Proxima who lived for 10,000 years. There were warrior races that had conquered whole star systems. They were all afraid of one small planet called Earth and the strange creatures that came from it, far away from the council meeting. Commander Li Wan was standing on the bridge of his ship. The ship was called New Soul, and it was huge. 200 humans lived and worked on this ship. They were getting ready to build their 15th new home on a planet in just 2 years. Li Wan was young for a commander, but his dark eyes showed he had seen many things. His crew trusted him because he never gave up on anything. The planet below them was cold and had no air that humans could breathe. Most aliens would look at this planet and fly away. But humans were different. They looked at the ice and rock and saw a challenge. They saw a place where they could build something amazingly. Juan walked to the big window and watched his people getting ready. Engineers were checking the machines that would melt the ice. Doctors were preparing the medicine they would need. Farmers were getting ready to grow food in the frozen ground. Every human knew their job and they were excited to start. What Li Wan did not know was that alien spies were watching everything. They were sending reports back to their home worlds about what humans could do. The reports were full of fear and wonder. On the other side of the galaxy, Captain Park Mina was doing something that made the aliens even more scared. Her ship was flying toward a mining station on planet Kepler for 4 to be. The station had been quiet for 6 months. Everyone thought the workers there were dead. The Zephyrian people who owned the mining station had tried to save their workers. They sent their best rescue teams. They used their most advanced technology. But the rocks had fallen deep into the ground and blocked all the tunnels. After 2 months, the Zephyrian government said the workers were gone. They held a big funeral and told everyone to forget about the mining station. But Captain Park Mina did not forget. She was small and quiet, but her will was like steel. When she heard about the trapped miners, she took her ship and flew there as fast as she could. Her crew thought she was crazy. The Zephyrians had given up and they were much better at mining than humans. Park Mina did not care what anyone thought. She had basic mining tools and a crew of 20 humans who believed in her. They landed on the planet and started digging. The rocks were harder than diamond. The tunnels were filled with poisonous gas. The temperature was so hot it could melt metal. For 4 days and 4 nights the humans dug. They took turns sleeping and eating, but they never stopped digging. Park Mina worked harder than anyone. Her hands were cut and bleeding, but she kept using her tools. When one machine broke, she fixed it with spare parts. When the tunnel filled with gas, she found a way to clear it out. On the 4th day they heard something. Voices calling from deep underground. The Zephyrian miners were still alive. All 47 of them were weak and hungry, but they were breathing. When Park Mina and her crew pulled the first miner out of the ground, the alien started crying. No one had ever worked so hard to save his people before. Back on the Council Homeworld, Intelligence Director Corathan was reading reports that made her tentacles shake with fear. She was an old tentacled one who had lived for 8 years. She had seen many species rise and fall, but she had never seen anything like the humans. The reports told stories that seemed impossible. Humans were building cities on planets where the temperature could freeze air solid. They were living in space stations next to black holes that would destroy any other species. They were growing food in soil that was full of poison. They were breathing air that would kill anyone else. But the most scary thing was not what humans could survive. It was how they got stronger every time something tried to stop them. When they found a planet too hot, they invented better cooling systems. When they found a planet too cold, they learned to use the ice as fuel. When they found a planet with no air, they built machines to make air. Corathan put down the reports and looked at her assistant. The young tentacled one was reading the same reports and his skin was turning pale green with fear. The intelligence about human expansion was getting worse every day. In 2 years, humans had spread to more planets than most species visited in a century. They were not just building colonies, they were building trade routes and communication networks and friendship agreements with everyone they met. Director Corathan called for a meeting with the top council members. When they gathered in the secret room under the main building, she showed them the numbers. Human colonies were growing by 20% every month. Human trade was making other species rich and powerful. Human technology was being shared freely with anyone who asked for help. The old aliens looked at each other with fear in their eyes. For thousands of years they had controlled the galaxy by keeping species separate and weak. They decided who could travel between stars. They decided who could trade with who. They decided which planets could be colonized, but humans were changing everything. They were helping other species become stronger. They were teaching aliens how to build better ships and grow more food and cure diseases. They were creating friendships between species that had been enemies for centuries. Ambassador Veltar stood up slowly. His voice was quiet, but everyone could hear the fear in it. He said the words that would change galactic history forever. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Galactic Council would watch a species not to protect them but to decide if they were too dangerous to live. The meeting ended with a vote. Every member raised their hand to agree. They would study the humans and learn their secrets. They would find their weaknesses. And if they had to, they would stop the humans before they changed the galaxy forever. But as the council members left the room, none of them knew that their greatest fear was already coming true. Humanity could not be stopped because they refused to believe that anything was impossible. And that belief was spreading to every corner of the galaxy. The secret meeting room was hidden deep beneath the council building where no one could hear what was being discussed. Ambassador Veltar looked around the table at the most powerful beings in the galaxy, but their faces showed only fear and desperation. 5 years ago they had ruled everything. Now they were meeting in shadows like criminals planning their last crime. The holographic display showed the latest intelligence report and the numbers were terrifying. In just 5 years, humanity had transformed. From unknown newcomers to the most influential force in the galaxy. Species that had hated each other for millions of years were now working together on human-inspired projects. Ancient enemies were setting aside their grudges to join human-led missions. Counselor Mora Vec of the Hive Worlds was the first to speak, her voice filled with poison. She had lived for 3,000 years and had seen many species rise and fall, but never like this. Her insect-like features twisted with rage as she presented her solution. They must strike at human space while the humans were still relatively small. She called humanity a virus that was spreading dangerous ideas across the galaxy. Ideas about cooperation and unlimited potential, ideas that, if made other species believe they could achieve anything they wanted. Soon, she warned, their own people would start thinking that the old ways were wrong. The plan they developed was elaborate and desperate. 7 of the most powerful civilizations would attack human colonies at the same time. They would make it look like humanity was a threat to galactic peace and stability. They would tell everyone that human expansion would lead to chaos and war. The irony was completely lost on them. They were planning the largest military coalition in galactic history to destroy the species that had brought more actual peace than the Council had achieved in 3,000 years of rule. But fear made them blind to their own contradictions. But the Council had made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated how deeply humanity had already become part of galactic society. Dr. Park Hae-on-woo medical advances had saved millions of lives across dozens of worlds. His vaccines had stopped 3 different plagues. His surgical techniques had given hope to species that had thought certain diseases were incurable. Captain Shinbo Ra rescue operations had become legendary across the galaxy. Her crews had pulled survivors from disasters that other species who could not even approach. When the crystal caves of Altair collapsed, she had spent 2 weeks digging through impossible conditions to save trapped miners. When the space station at Rigel lost power, she had flown her ship through a radiation storm to bring them supplies. The attack began at dawn on 7 different worlds simultaneously. The Council forces struck fast and hard, hitting human colonies that were supposed to be defenseless. The alien leaders expected quick victories followed by grateful galaxy thanking them for removing the human threat. But when the human colony on Altair Prime sent out its distress signal, the response was not what anyone expected. The call for help was answered not just by other human settlements, but by every species that humanity had ever helped. The galaxy had learned to love their human friends, and they would not let them die alone. The Krillin warriors arrived first, their ships bristling with weapons and their honor demanding they protect those who had shown them true strength. These were the same warriors who had been defeated by Sergeant Choi Dongho Patrol, but instead of seeking revenge, they sought to repay a debt. The humans had taught them that real strength came from protecting others, not from conquering them. The Zephyrian miners brought their industrial ships hastily converted into warships. They were still grateful for Captain Park Mina's incredible rescue mission that had saved their people from certain death. The mining equipment they carried was not designed for war, but their determination to help their human friends made them dangerous. Even the Vorthan Empire sent their entire fleet to defend their former enemies. The species that had terrorized the galaxy for 8,000 years now fought alongside the humans who had defeated them. The Vorthan had learned that partnership was stronger than conquest, and they would not let their teachers be destroyed. The crystal beings of Proxima arrived with technology that had been hidden for millions of years. They had decided that their ancient secrets were worth sharing, if it meant saving the species that had taught them to hope again. The Zarian collective bent time itself to bring reinforcements from across the galaxy. Admiral Jin Haewon stood on the bridge of her flagship watching the massive fleet assembling around Earth. The sight was unlike anything in galactic history. Hundreds of ships from dozens of species, all united for one purpose: to protect humanity from those who would destroy them. The fleet was not just large, it was impossible. Every ship carried weapons and shields and technology that had been shared freely by the humans. Every crew included members from multiple species working together with the efficiency that humans had taught them. Every captain had learned tactics that broke the old rules of warfare. The final battle lasted only 6 hours. The Council attack fleet had expected to fight desperate human colonists. Instead, they faced a united galaxy that had learned to fight like humans. They faced enemies who refused to give up, who found solutions to impossible problems, who treated overwhelming odds as just another challenge. The surrender message came from the Council flagship itself. Ambassador Veltar's voice was broken as he called for a ceasefire. The attack had been a complete disaster. Not only had they failed to destroy humanity, they had proven to the entire galaxy that the old order was dead. Admiral Jin Haewon accepted the surrender, but her terms were not what anyone expected. She did not demand tribute or territory or punishment. Instead, she offered the same thing humanity always offered. She offered partnership. The defeated council members were invited to join the new galactic community as equals. Their knowledge and experience would be valued, but their power to control others was over. The age of rulers and subjects was ending. The age of cooperation and mutual respect was beginning. The aftermath of the failed attack. Something amazing happened. The species that had attacked humanity began to understand what they had tried to destroy. The council members who had planned the assault started working with human engineers and scientists, and diplomats. Former enemies became allies as they learned the human way of solving problems together. The galaxy discovered that competition could be replaced by collaboration, that fear could be replaced by hope, that the impossible could become possible if everyone worked together. The transformation was not just political, it was spiritual. The ancient idea that some species were meant to rule while others were meant to serve was dying. The new idea that every being had unlimited potential was spreading faster than light itself. The Kim Sujin Neutron Star Research Station became a symbol of this change. Scientists from every species in the galaxy came to study her work and learn her methods. The station that had once been impossible was now the most important research facility in known space. Engineer Bai Yun Ho fusion drive improvements were being installed on ships throughout the galaxy. The technology that had once given humans an advantage was now lifting everyone to new heights of achievement. Species that had been trapped on their homeworlds for centuries were exploring the galaxy. The Galactic Council building stood empty, its great halls echoing with the ghosts of ancient power, the beings who had once controlled the galaxy. From those chambers were now learning to work as equals in a community they had never imagined possibly. Ambassador Veltar stood in his old office looking out at the city below. Ships from 100 worlds were landing and taking off, carrying people and goods and ideas that would have been impossible under the old system. He had spent his life maintaining the status quo, but now he was learning to embrace change. The reports on his desk told the story of a galaxy transformed. Crime rates were falling as species learned to work together. Trade was booming as new partnerships formed every day. Scientific discoveries were accelerating as knowledge flowed freely between worlds. But the most important change was in the hearts and minds of galactic citizens. The old fear of trying and failing was being replaced by the human belief that failure was just another step toward success. The old acceptance of limitations was giving way to the human conviction that anything was possibly. As Ambassador Veltar watched the sunset over the council city, he realized that humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy was not their technology or their courage. It was their absolute refusal to believe that tomorrow could not be better than today. The galaxy had learned to dream again, and that was the most dangerous and wonderful thing of all. 6 months after the failed attack that had tried to destroy humanity, the old Galactic Council voted to dissolve itself. The ancient institution that had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years officially ended its existence in a ceremony that was broadcast to every inhabited world. The old leaders stepped down from their positions of power and handed control to something that had never existed before. The new government was called the Galactic Federation, and it was built on principles that humanity had taught the galaxy. Every species would have an equal voice, regardless of how old their civilization was or how many worlds they controlled. Every decision would be made by cooperation instead of domination. Every citizen would have the right to reach for the stars. The first election in galactic history was held 3 months later. Billions of beings from hundreds of species cast their votes for representatives who would serve everyone instead of just their own kind. The result surprised everyone, including the winner president. Veltar stood at the podium in the new Federation Assembly Hall, looking out at delegates from every corner of the galaxy. The former ambassador who had once feared humanity rise was now the first elected leader of a united galaxy. His inauguration speech would be remembered for generations. "We feared change," he said, his voice carrying to every world through the instant communication network that Dr. Cha Yunsu had given to everyone. We were comfortable with our limitations and terrified of growth. We thought that safety meant never reaching too far, but humanity taught us that the greatest danger is not reaching at all. The crowd erupted in approval. Beings with tentacles and wings and crystalline bodies all cheered together. The sight would have been impossible just a few years earlier, when species barely spoke to each other. Now they worked together as naturally as breathing. The changes that followed came with breathtaking speed. Dr. Kim Soo-jin research near the neutron star had unlocked the secrets of unlimited clean energy. Within a year, every world in the galaxy had power stations that could provide free electricity forever. The scarcity that had driven conflicts for millions of years was becoming a memory. The mining techniques that human engineers had developed revolutionized resource extraction. Planets that had been considered worthless became treasure troves of rare materials. The abundance meant that no species needed to fight over resources anymore. There was enough for everyone to build whatever they dreamed. Commander Ojane established the first truly integrated military force in galactic history. The Federation Defense Corps was made up of volunteers from every species working together with the tactical genius that humans had pioneered. Strength came not from the biggest weapons but from the smartest strategies. But the most important change was not in technology or politics. It was in the way people thought. The concept of impossible began disappearing from galactic languages. Young beings grew up believing that any problem could be solved if you were determined enough and willing to work with others. The Krillin warriors, who had once been the most feared fighters in the galaxy, became the most eager students. They studied human military history to understand how smaller forces could defeat larger ones through creativity and determination. Their battle schools taught courses on human tactics alongside traditional combat trainings. Firing engineers stopped designing machines that were safe and started building ones that pushed the boundaries of physics. The species that had once been content with slow, incremental progress began creating innovations that amazed even human scientists. The ancient Zarian collective, masters of time itself, began collaborating with human physicists on projects they had never dared attempt before. They discovered that temporal mechanics could be used not just to observe the past but to prevent disasters in the future. Captain Lim Song-woo, now serving as Director of Colonial Operations, stood on the observation deck of Frontier Station, the newest deep space outpost. At the edge of explored space around him, representatives from 47 species worked together on projects that would have been unthinkable just a decade ago. Young Vorthan engineer named Kara Zeth was explaining her latest propulsion design to a team of human physicists. Her people had once been the galaxy's greatest oppressors, but now they were among its most creative builders. The technology she was describing could cut travel time between galaxies from centuries to years. Security officers shared combat techniques with their human counterparts, not as enemies studying each other but as partners learning together. The warrior culture that had once focused on conquest now dedicated itself to protection. Crystal beings, who had hoarded their knowledge for millions of years, were teaching their secrets to anyone who wanted to learn. That ancient wisdom that had once been restricted to a few was now available to everyone. Their transformation was visible everywhere. Captain Lim looked. Ships from dozens of worlds were launching toward unexplored regions of space. Each expedition included multiple species working together with the combined knowledge of the entire galaxy. The deep space missions were discovering wonders that no single species could have found alone. New forms of life that challenged every assumption about what was possible. Ancient artifacts that revealed the history of civilizations that had vanished before the current galactic order began. The most amazing discovery was what they found when they turned their instruments toward Earth. The small blue planet that had started this revolution was still there, still spinning quietly around its ordinary star. The beings who had changed everything were still living simple lives, still working hard, still refusing to believe that anything was impossible. Park Hyun-woo medical research had eliminated most diseases throughout the galaxy. His techniques were being used to heal injuries and illnesses that had plagued species for millions of years. The gift of health was spreading to every corner of civilization. Captain Shinbo Ra Rescue Service had expanded into the Galactic Emergency Response Team. Disasters that would have killed millions now resulted in swift, coordinated rescues that saved almost everyone. The idea that people could be abandoned to die was becoming as obsolete as the idea that some problems could not be solved. Engineer No Taeyang Gravitational Anchor Network had grown into a galaxy-wide system that could stabilize entire star systems. The technology was being used to create safe harbors for space travel and to prevent cosmic disasters before they happened. The economic changes were just as dramatic. The old system where a few species controlled trade and kept others poor was replaced by networks of cooperation that made everyone prosperous. The humans had taught the galaxy that wealth shared was wealth multiplied. The new federation established universities on every world where beings from different species could study together. The exchange of ideas created innovations that no single civilization could have achieved alone. The rate of technological advancement accelerated beyond anything In galactic history, art and culture flourished as species shared their creativity with each other. Human music inspired alien composers. Alien poetry influenced human writers. The cultural exchange created new forms of beauty that enriched every world. The military threats that had once divided the galaxy were disappearing as cooperation replaced competition. The Federation Defense Corps had almost nothing to defend against because the root causes of conflict were being eliminated one by one. But perhaps the most important change was in the hearts of ordinary citizens across the galaxy. Children grew up learning that their potential was unlimited. Adults discovered that it was never too late to try something new. Elderly beings found that their wisdom was valued and their experience was needed. The galaxy had learned humanity's greatest secret. They were not unstoppable because they were stronger or smarter than everyone else. They were unstoppable because they refused to accept that anything was impossible, and they had the courage to keep trying until they proved it. President Veltar stood in his office looking out at the city that had once been the center of galactic control. Now it was the center of galactic cooperation. The buildings were the same, but everything else had changed. Representatives from hundreds of worlds walked the streets working together on projects that would benefit everyone. The reports on his desk told the story of a galaxy transformed. Poverty was disappearing as resources were shared efficiently. Disease was being conquered as medical knowledge spread freely. Conflicts were being resolved through negotiation as species learned to work together. But the most important report was from the deep space exploration teams. They had found evidence of other galaxies with intelligent life. The universe was even bigger and more wonderful than anyone had imagined, and thanks to humanity, the galaxy was ready to meet whatever challenges lay ahead. As President Veltar watched the sunset over the Federation capital, he thought about the fear that had once consumed the council. They had been terrified that humanity could not be stopped. Now he understood that unstoppable was exactly what the galaxy had needed. The age of limitations was over. The age of possibilities had begun, and somewhere in the vast universe there were probably other species facing their own impossible challenges. They would need teachers who could show them that nothing was truly impossible. They would need examples of beings who refused to give up. The galaxy had learned those lessons from humanity. Now it was their turn to teach others. The cycle of growth and